Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 9 of Let's Talk About It. Today's episode is with Sana Badhwar, and Sana helps people work on things that I personally feel like are totally overlooked when it comes to other types of business coaching that are out there. Sana focuses on understanding your human design, how that integrates in with your business and how you operate in the world, helps you get into alignment with your human design, as well as work through any conditioning or mindset blocks that you may have by using neurolinguistic programming, which is so fascinating and such an incredible tool, as you will learn from what she talks about with it in the episode, of how it integrates in with the understanding of your chart and how you can make some really positive shifts in terms of how you show up and how you operate within your business. I am really passionate personally about this topic. As someone who has taken a lot of business coaching over the years, this was always something to me that was never really addressed in a way that I felt like needed to be addressed. Because at the end of the day, it's how we run our businesses, how we operate as entrepreneurs. If you are an entrepreneur listening to this right now, has a lot to do with how we feel about ourselves, and our own personal blocks that we may carry throughout our lives, our own conditioning that we may have. So with talking with Sana, she helped open up a whole new level of potential of things that can be addressed in order for us to live in alignment, not only to live better lives personally, but also to be able to show up as entrepreneurs and as business owners in a more impactful and meaningful way. As always, please don't forget to like this podcast, share it with your friends or anybody who you feel like could benefit from this message. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About It. I am really excited about this episode today, which I'm excited about everyone who comes on this show. Today in particular, though, we are going to be talking about some really cool things that I'm super into, and one of them is human design, as well as learning a bit about something called neurolinguistic programming. So I am here today with Sana Badhwar, and tell us a little bit about yourself, Sana.
Amazing. So I started my journey in corporate America, and I was in corporate marketing and sales for about 8 years. And I'd always had this inclination to become an entrepreneur because I knew it was in my blood. My dad's an entrepreneur. All of the women and men in his family line prior to him are entrepreneurs. So I jumped into it and I failed 3 times. I literally found myself just not being able to figure out the strategies, not being able to get all the answers I needed, not being able to get past imposter syndrome. But what happened was, at some point of, the 8 years of marketing, corporate marketing, sales, and failing at entrepreneurship, I just made up my mind and I said, I'm doing this. I'm going to learn it. I'm going to hire someone to help me. I don't care how much money it costs. I've been earning a really good salary so far. I have the money to pay. There's nothing stopping me from being a rip-roaring success the way that I believe I should be. I did it, made the investments, learned the right way, figured out all the steps, but something was still missing inside because I wasn't seeing the alignment that I needed. I was like, okay, I'm out here and I'm doing all the things, but it's not feeling right. I got certified in neurolinguistic programming. And then shortly after that, I won't say it was necessarily like in that sequential order because I had discovered human design somewhere along my path. But in the discovering of human design, I was applying it to myself first. And then when I started getting my first few clients after I'd certified in neurolinguistic programming, I started to touch on human design with them a little bit and using my own experience of human design. And after doing that, they started seeing results. And then I had an entire pivot and I was like, I'm not doing just like mindset and branding work anymore, which is what I started out doing as an entrepreneur. I decided to pivot fully into human design. So I made a full transition into human design and I took what I knew and then doubled it with certifications in both traditional and quantum human design. And now I've combined it with neurolinguistic programming and I coach my clients, help them with both neurolinguistic programming and human design in their businesses and how to apply it for success in the areas of income, productivity, and increasing their I call it fempact because so far all of my clients have been women. But really it's your impact as a person, because human design's for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So
I
that's kind
love
of a
that.
little bit about, yeah, that's a little bit about my background and like what got me started.
Oh, so cool. So I'm like, I absolutely love the application because business is so closely associated to personal development. And it's from my perspective as well, just from like my experience of also being an entrepreneur, that, I'm the only person in my life that's ever held me back from doing anything. And that's where human design for me was a really big eye opener, in terms of like, how do I show up? How can I make like business actually like work for me, as opposed to me feeling like I need to fit into this mold that I don't feel like I fit into? So I absolutely love that you offer that type of stuff to people.
Yeah. And you know what, just on that note of like fitting into someone else's mold versus easing into your own, right? It's so much of that is actually just self-acceptance, but self-acceptance from a place of awareness, which is why human design is so powerful, because not only are you listening to somebody reflect you back to yourself to say you are an amazing person, you are capable of all of the things that you want to do, you do have the skills and the tool sets to the toolkit to allow yourself to expand into these areas of opportunity. But here it is in black and white on your chart. So I'm
Mhm.
not making anything up. I'm literally showing you and reflecting back to you everything that you are. Because human design, it's not just some sort of divination or, self-assessment tool. It's deeper than that. It takes 5 different sciences into account, right? We're talking astrology, we're talking the chakra system, we're talking I Ching, we're talking quantum physics, and the Kabbalah. So it's these 5 metaphysical/real sciences that are coming into play to really help us understand who we are at our very core, right from the time of birth to various different points throughout the year, right? Because we know about transits and we know how transits influence us as well.
Mhm.
I was going to say, in the context of transits, just so that for anyone who's listening and who's new to human design, but maybe has like a basic sense of astrology or understands planets,
Mhm.
and this is actually going to be for anybody really, is when we understand astrology, we think, oh, my zodiac sign is X, but we don't actually look at the way that planets move. And when planets move, they affect us on a collective level. The part where astrology and human design come together is it actually allows us to see how the planets move through our bodies versus around the sun. So it gets even more specific when you start to look at the way that transits influence us as well. It's not just that static natal chart of your human design chart, but it's so much more. Like, you are a living, breathing, dynamic body, and there's only ever going to be one astrological collision, which is you, at any
Love
point in
that.
time in the world.
I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit? So, just so I'm clear, as well as people who are listening, about the different, is this where like the quantum element of human design comes in a little bit more, like when you're talking about even like planetary movements? Um,
Yeah. So it is
yeah.
very quantum related, but it's also related to, in my understanding, right? Because I've studied both traditional as well as quantum human design. So in my understanding of the quantum aspect of it, this is not including the quantum physics side of it, but really the quantum piece of it, is that we are all connected to the fabric of the universe. The fabric of the universe is really, really, really vast. And when we think about our lives as individuals, there is an entire quantum field of possibilities and things that we can potentially call into our 3D reality. So if you literally think about it, if you look up and you think of everything that you want inside of a bubble, that bubble is just one bubble of many bubbles that exist inside of the quantum space, because there's billions of humans with billions of dreams. And if each human being, imagine, has like 100,000 of their own desires, that's like literally infinite numbers of possibilities of things that could be true. So when you think about the quantum and the field of the quantum and the realities that could come to pass for us, it's tapping into the vastness of the universe in order to make it our own. How we can understand it more from a biological perspective and just from a 3D, and how do I turn that thing that I want into a reality? We have to understand that each one of us are light beings. So we hold light inside of our bodies. We carry light inside of our bodies. And effectively, the quantum field is a field full of light. If we want to start pulling more of that light into our 3D space, we're actually going to need to upgrade our inner DNA. And we can do that the more we start to become in alignment with who we truly are. And so the access from the quantum field to the 3D field is a process of actually allowing our bodies to hold more light. And the more light we hold, the more our DNAs expand. The more our DNA expands, the more we're able to start to actually manifest more of what we want into our lives. And that's essentially a function of alignment. And that's why alignment is so powerful, because alignment is really the thing that's keeping us apart from what we want versus what we have.
Oh my goodness, my mind's like blown right now. This is like a whole new way of having human design explained to me. So I'm like, this is so cool.
I'm so happy.
Yeah. So, okay. From what you're saying there, because I know on the topic of purpose, because I feel like a lot of people who are entrepreneurs do it from a place of purpose, of like, this is what I'm supposed to do with my life. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So in the context of human design and purpose, right? Human design, it's so vast and it's so detailed and it's so intricate. And there are so many ways that you could go about analyzing someone's chart, right? But in the context of specifically life purpose and human design and that intersection, we have these things in our charts known as incarnation crosses. Each one of us is born with an incarnation cross, right? And an incarnation cross, like simply put, is the way or the theme that your life is going to hold as your life plays out, right? So for example, there's this thing called a right angle cross of the sleeping phoenix. I see that one come up a lot. It comes up a lot amongst manifesting generators. And there is a certain reason why, but that's a technical reason. So I'm not going to dive into that. But what I will say is a lot of people that have the right angle cross of the sleeping phoenix will experience their growth through love, through relationships, and through feeling like they have almost accomplished something, but still feel a little bit further away from it, even though they're very much on their way to getting the thing that they most desire. On that note, each one of us is going to have different crosses. Some of us have right angle crosses, some of us have left angle crosses, some of us are juxtaposed. Those are the three different types of crosses. And so on that note of life purpose, seeing your life play out with a theme is a very big part of understanding your purpose, because it's like, oh, so these things that have been happening are the reason why I've been experiencing and learning these lessons. So if we say, for example, somebody who, in the context of the right angle cross of Phoenix, what's their life purpose? Like, okay, the theme that's been playing out is I'm learning through love, I'm learning through these relationships, I'm almost getting there, but not quite. They have a really big purpose to play in inspiring people to believe that it's possible to have what you want regardless of a series of difficulties. So those could be some of the teacher, like the relationship coaches. Those could be coaches on being able to break through to your next level. So a breakthrough coach. Sorry, that's my puppy. He's in the room. And when you start to understand those themes more, you start to see a life purpose emerge. And it can take any format, but it's about knowing that these are sort of the things that you're going to be able to teach really well because you're experiencing them. And a lot of life purpose is drawn from life experience.
That's really cool. So I have the right angle cross of rulership. And so that one's been an interesting one for me personally to figure out. And I think this is where like my interest of human design comes in, especially when it comes to my business, because the rulership for me also comes from a perspective of like not necessarily me being the leader of everyone, but me being in control of myself. Right. So it's like understanding that, you know, a life purpose is a personal journey that also then transcends into how you're able to serve others.
Yeah, and I almost want to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole and almost like talk about from a technical perspective, which is a right angle cross is very interpersonal. A left angle cross, or rather a left angle cross is, or rather, intrapersonal. So it's more about the individual. When you have a right angle cross, it's more about your experience. A left angle cross is about your experience in the context of others. And a juxtaposition, that's a really interesting one because it involves people, but it also involves a lot of the self. And it's challenging for the person that has a juxtaposed cross because they're kind of in the push and pull balance of, am I supposed to be supporting other people through this? And am I an interpersonal being? Or am I supposed to be working on myself? And that a lot of times is the context of the cross is balance.
So cool.
So cool.
In my human design, so I'm sure you're aware of that platform. I find it really interesting, the stuff that they talk about. And one of the things is about the upper right number in your human design chart and how that's also related to purpose. Do you look at that number?
Yeah. So when you're talking about the conscious line, right? The black line. And then all those numbers that are like in that. Yeah, of course, that is deeply connected to life purpose. So again, like here's another opportunity for us to go down a little bit of the human design rabbit hole where we start to see the profile, right? So you look at, for example, every person. So there are four main things, just to focus this conversation for a second. There are four main things that I always advise that people pay attention to when they're initially starting their human design journey. It starts with the type. Then you dive into your strategy of the type. So human design strategy of the type that you are, the authority, the human design authority, and the profile, your profile that's connected to your human design. So if I'm giving an example, I'm a 1-3 sacral generator. What that means is my type is pure generator. My strategy is sacral. My authority is sacral. And my profile is 1-3. If I'm giving the example of my husband is a 6-2 emotional manifester. So his type is a manifester. His strategy is emotional. His authority, or rather his strategy is not sacral, it is to inform. His authority is emotional and his profile is 6-2. So this is why when you go to people's, like you go to their bios and you see on Instagram and you see them talk about these numbers, and I'm like, what is 1-3 sacral generator? What does that even mean? Why is it so complicated? These are the 4 things that you need to know for anybody: type, strategy, authority, profile. Now bringing that in and bringing that back to that number on the top right, speaking of that from the perspective of profile, and that is because your profile is like your costume. It's the way that you move through the world and how people see you. So it's how you look at your closet and choose what you want to wear, and then how people see what you wear.
I love
So it's
that
your costume
analogy. Yeah.
as you move through the world. And so the way that we move through the world and the way that we operate has a lot to do with our profile, right? So the way that we're choosing to interact, why we're making certain decisions, those are all aspects of your purpose. But in a way of almost understanding your modus operandi. That number on the top right is so connected to purpose, because what it's telling you is that you will have to experience a certain amount of challenges in that number of the profile before you can step into the higher version of who you really are. Before you can actually express your full self.
Okay.
So it shows you your areas of opportunity before you're able to evolve fully.
Okay. That's really cool. And that's a whole new way that I've heard that number talked about before. That kind of connects a little bit. Just when you were saying that, it reminds me a little bit of like north nodes and south nodes in astrology, where it's like those challenges that you're dealing with in this lifetime. Yes. Like north node stuff. That's cool. I've never like made that connection before.
It's exactly like that. It's exactly like that with some nuances, because again, even in human design, like I said, astrology in human design plays such an interesting part because it's moving through your body. So while your north node in astrology is going to be one, for example, my north node is Aquarius, my south node is Leo, and it will always be that way, because just from the sheer context of like opposites, right? So it's almost like saying if one is black, one has to be white. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like if and I'm going to change that. If when we're looking at yin and yang, if one is yin, one always has to be yang, right? Mm-hmm. Like they're polar opposites. So the same thing with north node and south node. If you are an Aquarius north node, you will be a Leo south node, and vice versa. If you're a Leo south node, you have to be an Aquarius north node. So effectively speaking, those will always match. So if anyone's trying to figure out, well, I know my north node, but I don't know my south node, that's like the quickest way to know it, is like it's yin and yang. It will be the polar opposite of the other one. Right. But now coming back to just north and south in the context of human design in the chart, your north node and your south node might be one from the context of astrology. And a lot of times you will see there's like a bit of a matchup as well, but they will be different in your chart, in your human design chart. So your south node and your north node will have placements inside of certain centers, inside of gates. And if we're getting a little bit more specific now, once you go from type, strategy, authority, profile, you'll start to see things that we call centers, which are all the shapes on the human design chart. And then inside those shapes are a series of numbers, and those numbers are known as gates. But in understanding north node and south node, where those nodes are placed, they will be inside of gates. Those gates carry energy. And when those energies are inside a specific center, they prime you to behave in certain ways that either you're conscious of or you're just operating on a programming. And this could be an interesting segue to NLP as well. Mm-hmm. But when we try to understand what they are, The opportunity is in understanding what direction the energy is trying to move us versus what is necessarily the astrological meaning of having a north node and what is the astrological definition of this particular north node. They're supposed to be used in conjunction.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. But on the segue to neurolinguistic programming, I talked about being consciously aware of doing certain things a certain way, and then being subconsciously operating on programming. And that's where neurolinguistic programming comes in.
Okay.
Yeah, so neurolinguistic programming and human design are such amazing partner fields of education because we talk a lot in human design about being conditioned or being deconditioned, right? Where you see openness in someone's chart, which is typically on their human design chart, where you see a lot of like undefined or white centers versus colored centers. Those are all areas where people are specifically able to be conditioned. They're more easily conditioned than where they're defined. And that's because when you're undefined, you're receiving information versus putting out information, receiving energy versus transmitting energy. So those spaces naturally tend to be like absorbent. They'll take in a lot. And then they get conditioned throughout the course of a person's lifetime to act in certain ways that are not true or authentic to their natural energetic pattern. So in human design, we talk about deconditioning. In neurolinguistic programming, we are actually then going to the subconscious layer where we find this old programming that is running. So for example, imposter syndrome, for example, shiny object syndrome. For example, just someone's inability to feel confidence in who they are, the inability to necessarily see themselves through to the end of a project or to get the kind of results they want. All of that is happening because we are not able to see our true potential, first of all, because of all of the conditioning that's happened throughout our lives, and because of the old programming that is playing that's telling us somewhere or the other that we're either not good enough or that we don't have the skills to do XYZ thing. So they work really well together because human design provides that black and white foundation of like, this is what's going on. And neurolinguistic programming is a tool that allows you to then help the person access their subconscious mind in a kind and in a fast way to then release those things that are holding them back from getting to their highest potential.
Oh my goodness. You're like blowing my mind right now. Cause that was like, because human design I find is a great tool. It's a great opportunity to like learn, your more about yourself, but also how you show up and, the conditioning aspect and all those things. But that is one thing that I can see perfectly where the NLP like comes in just to like help with those things that are actually holding you back.
Yes.
Like an actual tool.
It's an actual tool. Yeah. It literally actually allows you to be able to help someone release. And there are so many different things, right? So even within the field of neurolinguistic programming, there's hypnotherapy, there's emotional freedom techniques, which is basically tapping. There is timeline therapy, which basically allows you to take that person through their timeline to be able to release the things that were holding them back. And then there's all the skills of life coaching, life and success coaching. And then there's also this layer of being able to work with someone with various techniques, which are known as neurolinguistic programming, those set of techniques. And there's multiple different like levels of mastery that you can attain all the way to the point of being a master trainer, where you can actually train people that would like to get certified in neurolinguistic programming. But for me, I found that for now, me being able to serve at my highest doesn't require me to become a master trainer. And that's something that like I really want to emphasize right now, just in this moment, is to let people that are listening and to really drive home this message of you do not need to be ridiculously certified in order to be somebody who cares and wants to help people and to run a business where you can actually help people and be
Yes.
effective.
Yes. I love that you said that, because that's a really big, I mean, I know for me personally, and then you also see it with people who are almost overeducated sometimes, where it's like, you feel like you need to have this external shell of like, here's all the knowledge and here's all the education that I have in order to feel worthy to like help others. So I love that you just said that. Such a
Yeah,
big deal.
it's such a big deal. It's such a big deal. And I feel like you just can't say it enough. And, the other reason why I say it is because I am a contradiction to what I'm saying. Do you know what I mean? Like, I am certified. I am certified in human design, both traditional and quantum. I am certified in neurolinguistic programming. And it was only after I went through my journey of getting all these certifications that I realized that I could have helped people anyway. I may not have been able to help people specifically in this way, but I could have been a very, very successful business coach regardless. But I, at the time, felt this need to prove, oh my gosh, like, look how qualified and skilled I am.
Right.
But when I look back on it, though, with a retrospective lens, what I do see emerging is the fact that, again, my profile is coming into play. As a 1-3, right? The one in me loves to learn. The one in me is an avid learner. But I learn for the sake of learning and for this because I enjoy it so much. But the 3 in me also needed to try a lot of things, still needs to try a lot of things. The 3 is a very experimental energy. So it pushed me to get certified in all these different ways. It was like, oh, yeah. Like the 1 was like, yeah, go, get certified, learn all of these things, get all this information because it feels really good to study. And the 3 is like, yeah, and do it in all these different ways.
Yeah.
So that's another place where when we look back on our lives, human design actually helps us to have a kinder lens on the past. It's like, oh, that's why I behaved the way I behaved back in the day.
Yeah, I get that. So I'm a 4-6 profile. So that 6 line having the 3 in there too is that like my whole like up until I would say that first 1/3 ended for me probably about at 32. I would say maybe even 33, not 28.
Yeah. No,
No.
it's always after like the 6, that triphasic experience. It's not super accurate as like the first third of your life, it's going to end at 30. What I'm learning from experience and I attract a lot of 6 energies as well, by the way. Like, I don't know what it is, but I attract a lot of like 6 energy. 6s like to come to me. And I'm very flattered. I love it. I love it. But like that 6 energy, that triphasic experience, for anyone that's listening that wants to understand what I mean by triphasic, the 6 line will go through 3 distinct phases in its life. The first line being very experimental, equal to the 3. The second phase being very distant, almost like wanting to be removed from people, choosing like that 6 will choose when it wants to engage versus it, and it cannot be invited out. It decides on its own. Like, I'm making the decision to engage and I'm also making the decision to disengage. And then in the third phase of a 6's life, they start to become seen as revered leaders. Like, they're wanted for their information and their expertise, and they're always invited out. But by that point, it's a very extroverted phase. So you might find yourself, Jillian, going into ENFJ when you're in the last phase of your 6. And it's not for the fact that you didn't try to be an introvert. It's more like you're just enjoying being out there so much, and you will be wanted and you will be needed. So you might see yourself skewing a little bit less introverted around that time. You may not go all the way to E, but you might be less introverted around that time. So interesting to understand those triphasic phases. And then also, just as we were saying earlier, it doesn't just end around like, it's not exactly in your 30s. It's going to happen somewhere, like you said, 32, 33, where things start to feel a little bit more solid. Like, yeah, I'm settling down into this identity and it's starting to feel better. Yeah.
I will say that it's been actually, I mean, I believe that all things are a blessing, even like regardless of how frustrating they are to go through. And the pandemic has definitely been no no
Cakewalk.
fun, for anybody. But I will say that it's been really interesting to me that my transition actually happened during COVID. Like that whole of like going through all this experimenting and then realizing no, like I'm in control of myself, as opposed to like feeling like I need to keep like, doing all these other things. It's been a really interesting transitional phase that I hope a lot of people have actually learned a lot about themselves during all of this.
I feel like you're probably speaking on behalf of 100% of the population. But like, yes, I really agree with you on that. And I really do resonate with that, because, if I'm going a little bit woo.
We love woo. Yeah.
Mother Earth. Okay. Mother Earth has been experiencing her ascension. So age of Aquarius is not a mistake, right? So the Piscean age was the age just before age of Aquarius. And the Piscean age was all about structures. It was all about systems. It was all about hierarchies. And it was all about, us almost like pandering to the ones that were considered to be more authority than us. What's happened is, during that Piscean age, Mother Earth's ascension had to slow down. She had to stop her ascension. And those are all connected to various different celestial events as well. We're talking star seed events, we're talking, various different planets, like we're talking essentially like our guides that are out there in the universe. So that particular process of ascension slowed down during the Piscean age in a big way. But what has happened is, again, celestial events that are taking place out in the universe in multiple different ways that we cannot see or watch or necessarily consciously grasp onto are taking place right now. And in order to help Mother Earth heal, there has, in the past as well, we have had to experience cataclysmic events, catalytic events that have created major shifts in the way that we perceive, in the way that we believe, in the way that we're able to trust. And in the process of us having our own, like, essentially, as Mother Earth has had her ascension, we're all having our own little mini ascensions as well. And COVID-19, while it was most certainly an unpleasant event for all of us to experience, like having to be, cooped up at home, not being able to go out, businesses shutting down, other people losing jobs, like, we've really been pushed into a place of discomfort. But what do we know about discomfort, right? It is only when you are at the edge of discomfort that you start to see your greatest self emerge. You have to embrace your discomfort. Yes. And so Mother Earth herself has had to embrace her own discomfort through COVID-19 in order to ascend. And she's bringing all of us with her. She's like, for those of you that are ready, for those of you that are awake and you're open and you're excited about this evolution, come on, because I need all of you that are ready to come with me. I need all of you to hop onto this train and let's go. Let's bring more light to this planet. And so you think about, again, it comes back to light workers, comes back to star seeds, comes comes back to everyone that is talking about divinity, or just even bringing it down to the grassroots, like embracing your confidence, feeling good, getting out there, taking those bold steps in the direction of self-belief and what you believe is right for you. That's what's happening. And it's taking major events like this one for a full consciousness to shift.
I love
So
that.
we're not believing so much in corporate jobs or having to be somewhere from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. in order to be productive, or having to listen to quote unquote the man in order to feel like we are worthy of being who we want to be. And yes, we actually can see ourselves being productive, income generating, and impactful in ways that are most aligned to us, in ways that are most connected to our human design, our natural energetic patterns.
I absolutely love that. Is that, does that tie in with some of the I've noticed on Instagram lately, you've been talking a lot about the divine feminine, or bringing in femininity into business. Would that kind of be along the lines of that topic?
Yes, yes, and yes. So absolutely yes. So let's break that down for a second. Femininity versus divine femininity, first of all. Okay.
Okay.
Divine femininity is essentially, for me, a really simple way of embracing your higher self. It's embracing who you believe you would be if you had, which we all do, but if you really were like using your goddess abilities. It's like, yep, I have this superpower. I am a goddess. I'm going to conjure this up, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to point my finger here, and this thing's going to appear here, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do that. Basically, who you believe you could be if you were absolutely infinitely powerful. And then, so that's your divinity. And then there is femininity. And inside of femininity, there is reflection. It is shadow work. It is knowing who you are at your core. And it's taking the time to get comfortable with all those things about yourself that made you uncomfortable once. Like, it was a huge step for me to start talking on social media, to start doing stories, just to start sharing this truth of my own, right? Where I can actually believe that I'm worthy of bringing clients on board and helping them to see this in themselves and getting paid for this work. It was a huge step for me, as it is for so many of us that are on this journey of entrepreneurship, on this journey of supporting our brothers and sisters in being the highest versions of who we are. It's scary. It's frightening. It feels impossible sometimes. Some mornings you wake up and you're just crying, or some mornings you're going to bed and you're constantly thinking about work and wondering if you served in the highest, and if you hurt anyone today, or if you didn't hurt someone today, or if you're doing your best, or those little things that affect us in such deep ways, but it takes courage to do. That's your femininity, getting comfortable with what's uncomfortable. And then there's masculinity, which is strategy, planning, doing the work, getting out there, hustling, checking those boxes and making sure things are going according to plan. But that is such a small percentage of who we are, and how we're truly here to impact, and how we're here to get our message across. That's the masculine part, but it's very small.
And it's unfortunately, it's unfortunately also like what the majority of business coaches actually focus on.
Yes.
And they forget about this whole other part of the background needle moving work that, not a lot of us, it's almost as if we've been conditioned or trained to belittle those things, or to make them almost feel as if they're weaknesses, as opposed to areas to build some true strength.
Exactly. I feel like you've nailed it. And it's really as simple as, if you don't know where you're going, how are you going to get there?
Yeah.
That femininity, it's your map. It's your map. It's like, ah, it brings, and I think you alluded to this earlier as well, which is what you said of, I don't need to necessarily be in such an experimental phase anymore. I'm the one who's in control. I'm the one who gets to decide. I can put the focus on what I can control.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the aspect of doing the feminine work, doing the hard feminine work, that will separate someone who wins from someone who applies the strategy, checks all the boxes, does all the right things, but doesn't feel aligned, and then doesn't get anywhere.
Yeah.
Because I did that.
Yeah.
I did it
we
too.
all have done that, right? And it's just like, yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm missing this part of the strategy. Okay, well, maybe now if I do this thing, I'm gonna do really well.
Yeah, exactly.
Nope.
I must not be doing my Instagram post right or something like that.
Yeah.
When we really marketing works, right? We've all been marketed to, and we've all been led to believe that, these are all things that in order to be successful, you have to tick the boxes on all this stuff. But so little, I start to see it more and more now, this recognition of the feminine side, or that femininity aspect that you just shared with us. I did have a question on that though for you about that so when you were speaking about that, it made me kind of think about with myself. And so my not self theme as a manifestor would be anger. And boy, do I have a lot of anger.
Yes.
But I've noticed that it's definitely, I think it's that tool that, being trained that emotion is weakness. I've suppressed a lot of that stuff that, oh, you're mad. Oh, just suck it up. Just play the game. Just keep doing what you're doing. As opposed to taking the time, which I've been trying to do more recently, of acknowledging that, this person, I got reactive towards the way this person said this to me, or this situation that happened. And instead looking at, so it's like those emotional cues that each one of us have based on our human design, even are cues of where we could actually, dive a little bit deeper to figure out well, why were we so reactive to that? Would you say that that's a good cue, is your not self emotional?
Oh my God. Theme? Yeah. 100%. So and it's such a good question, because that is exactly what it is that tells us that we're living off the chart. So when you're off the chart, you're basically living a deconditioned life, where you're doing things in a way that did not feel authentic to you. Now, and it's so interesting that we're talking about this, because, I love that as a manifestor, you're asking me about femininity, because I always say this: manifestors have the most masculine energy type in human design. Contrary to what's been floating around out there, where everyone talks about, generators and manifesting generators as being so masculine because they have all this life force energy from their sacral and they do a lot. I believe the complete opposite, and I have experienced the complete opposite, which is generators and manifesting generators are the most feminine, because we have to wait to respond. Projectors as well have to wait to respond. Reflectors, I don't believe, are that feminine. And manifestors are the most masculine. But yes, in the context of when we're talking about the big picture of femininity, and femininity being able to sit with those things that make you uncomfortable, and really diving deep into those emotions, that is the best way to be able to clue in to what is making you feel out of alignment, which is the way you're responding to things that make you mad. As a manifestor, the things that make you angry are the things that you need to actually be loosening yourself up from.
Yeah.
And there's obviously more nuanced responses to that. So, for example, if I was reading your chart, I would look at it and I would say, I sincerely believe that this aspect of your chart is something that you are not honoring enough. And you need to be looking at your anger with this lens.
Mm.
And likewise, if somebody else was to say, well, Sana, this situation makes me frustrated, it's not so much of, do you need to walk away from that circumstance slash do you need to actually embrace this circumstance more? It's not such a black and white answer. It's like, okay, well, what's going on in your chart that is causing this contradiction for you, that's causing this anger for you as a manifester, and what's happening in your life that either needs to shift or that perhaps you need to shift internally. And that's where NLP would come in.
Yes.
So it's a very layered response, but that's what I do. I help with those. And now when I speak of the word strategy, I'm literally talking about tools, tips, process. I give you the strategy to be able to use your human design in ways that will amplify your productivity, your income, your impact according to how your energy is primed to serve you. And here's a really important tip too, right? Like if something is causing you anger as a manifestor, um, because you can't do the thing that you most want to do, one of the strategies they would give you is how to plan your calendar around that so that you're able to do more of what you want to do instead of getting caught up,
I love
instead
that.
of getting stuck in something gummy that's preventing you from being able to actually just like, I just want to go, right? Like a manifestor's energy is a lot like a sword, like a machete cutting through grass. Like, get out of my way. I got to move. Like,
Yeah.
I need to flow. Like, go away.
Oh
And
yeah.
then when I'm done, like when I'm done cutting through all this like crazy, these thickets of grass, come and get me then. I might or might not be available for you, but we'll see.
That's so true. It's even right down to like, I am very apprehensive of even putting things in my schedule, like, because I'm so sensitive about like even me, like telling myself what to do makes me annoyed, right? Like
Yeah.
it's an interesting
So
energy to
funny.
try to play with, but I like the calendar suggestion. That was actually really good.
Yeah, the calendar suggestion is key. Um, I find, are you a morning person?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, so what I would do is like literally wake up in the morning and just do the first thing that's on your mind. Just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one of the first things I will suggest without actually looking at your entire chart, without looking at like, what's going on in other aspects of your life. Like that is one thing I can say to you with 100% certainty is like just wake up in the morning and do the first thing that comes to your mind.
Yeah.
Give it like that, like treat it like it's holy, basically.
Yeah.
Let that be your way of embracing your femininity, like your first step to embracing your femininity and harnessing it through the masculinity of just doing the do.
I absolutely love that. That actually like reinforces because I've noticed that about myself, that my morning routine is a really big deal, and don't mess with my morning routine type of thing. Even from like, Jill, don't mess with your own morning routine.
That's so funny. Ooh, I might contradict you, but that's probably for a different conversation because like I know like I could totally like you and I can dive deep on this. Like
Oh
I
yeah,
because
I'm definitely interested. I want to hear more about what you have to say. If there's like, I know you've given us so much information so far. If there's one last piece of information that you feel like would be a great takeaway from everything that you'd like to share with us, is there anything that comes to mind?
so in terms of like a value, here's what I would like to leave each type with is a little piece of advice on productivity. So, like I just told Joe, as a manifestor, she needs to carve out like literally a free morning to do what it is that she is most called to do, whatever it is. If you're a projector in your calendar, I highly recommend adding time for rest and relaxation And I'm talking like a decent sized chunk. Like, be kind to yourself. Give yourself a good 2.5, 3 hours to just relax in the middle of the day. If you are a reflector, choose to put yourself in an environment where your only influence is your own, because you've been surrounded by too many people for a very long time. So set aside some time in your calendar where you get to have just an hour of, no pun intended, reflection time and alone time as a reflector. If you're a manifesting generator, put about 5 20-minute breaks in your calendar between long, sort of like working, um, like work sessions, because it'll allow you to tune back into the joy of your staple. And if you're a generator, I do this all the time, schedule off days on non traditional days. I typically will take a very, very soft working day on a Monday, and I won't work very hard on a Monday. But then there are some Fridays like today where I'll work really hard and I'm happy with it and I'm aligned with it and I have the energy to do that. And I'll probably do that tomorrow too. And then Sunday, maybe I'll rest, maybe I'll work a little bit, but schedule off days on like non-typical days, on atypical days, basically, if you're a generator. So that's what I'll say in terms of like scheduling productivity for your type. And then last but not least, I would love to invite, including you, Jill, to my upcoming masterclass called Evolve. And we're going to be talking all about how human design influences the way that you show up in terms of productivity, how you're earning your income in your business, as well as how your impact is being felt out in the world by others who are watching you in the most aligned and effective way possible. That's coming up on January 19th. And for anyone who registers, there's a little bit of a competition I'm holding where I'm going to randomly select between 1 and 3 people for a free 1 hour human design business consult with me.
Oh my goodness. That sounds so amazing. I will definitely be there.
Yay!
And I will put the link down below in the bio or the show notes of this podcast so that everybody can find it there as well.
Amazing. I can't wait.
Me neither, actually. That sounds so cool.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. I'm not going to lie, I'm in the midst of creating content for right now, but it's going to be very interactive as well. Like, everyone's going to be able to download a workbook, and we'll be actually like doing, like, it'll be like a mini workshop too. So there's going to be a lot.
Love it. Okay, I will be there. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today, and so much knowledge. I'm like kind of like, oh my goodness, I have to re-go through this podcast like a few times now to like take in some of the things that you said. It's just so much information and so helpful too. So thank you for that.
So glad. I am so glad. Honestly, gratitude is with me because you thought about me, you reached out to me in the most unexpected and the most aligned way, which I loved in pure manifestor fashion. And I can most certainly never ever fault you for that, because it's turned out to be such a beautiful conversation. And yeah, truly, like, pleasure and gratitude sits with me as well. So thank you.
Oh, thank you, Sana. There you have it. I hope you guys will also be on Sana's masterclass with me on January the 19th. I have posted in the show notes below where you can follow along with Sana for more information on her approach to neurolinguistic programming and human design, how you can integrate that into your business, as well as where you can sign up for her masterclass. So I will see you guys all there.